This quick video will show you how to use the vlookup function in Excel. So you can see that I have an Excel data sheet with a number of sample ID numbers. Perhaps these are samples for analysis. And next to the sample ID numbers, I've got sampling dates where each of the samples were taken. I've got the type of sample, water, sediment, or soil, and then I have the concentration of arsenic in each of the samples. So what I might want to do, given that I have a huge array of sample numbers and sample results, what I might like to do is look up the sampling date, type of sample, and the concentration of arsenic for a particular sample ID number without having to scroll through my big array and find it. And so the vlookup function allows us to do that. First thing you have to do is make sure that your data is sorted by a particular column that you want to use for your vlookup function to focus on. And in this case, the obvious thing that we want to focus on is the sample ID number. So what I've done is I've sorted my spreadsheet, my array, from my lowest to my highest sample ID number in intervals of 1. And so what I'd like to be able to do, for example, is look up sample ID 500. And I want to see what is the sampling date, the type of sample, and the concentration of arsenic for that sample. And then I want to be able to quickly look up any sample whose sample ID number I type in that particular cell. So the way we do that is we type in the vlookup function, which is equals vlookup. All right, then we, for the first part of the function argument, we enter the sample ID number, the value that the lookup function is going to look for first. So that number that we want to look for is 500. So that's always going to be in cell G2 in the way that I'm setting up my spreadsheet. Then we follow that with a comma. And the next thing we enter into the function is the place where the vlookup function should look. In other words, the array of all the data. So my array contains data from cells A2 all the way down to cell D111. And so I just highlight the part of my spreadsheet that contains all of that data. And I'm going to follow that with a comma. And now I'm going to tell my vlookup function which column to look in that is to the right of the particular sample number I've entered. And so if we think about the first column as column 1, the column in this case that had the number we were looking up, then my sampling date will be in the second column. So the column index number here is going to be 2. And that's all you have to enter. You can forget about the final piece in this function. It's an optional thing that I don't understand. So we can enter that for our vlookup function, and we see that for sample number 500, it must have been taken on the 15th of May. Let's go verify that. And sure enough, sample number 500 was taken on the 15th of May. All right, we do exactly the same thing then when we want to look up the type of sample that number 500 was, and also the concentration of arsenic that was present in sample 500. So I'm just going to do the vlookup function, and the only thing I'm going to change is the column number that I'm looking in for the piece of data that corresponds to sample 500. So I'm going to type in equals vlookup. The value is 500 again. My table array is A2 all the way down to D111. And for the type in my comma, for the type of sample, that's in column 1, 2, 3. And then I hit close parentheses, and I see that that was a soil sample. And finally, for my concentration of arsenic, I'll use the vlookup function. My sample ID, the table array, And then in this final case, my column number is 4. And you can see that we get the arsenic concentration. And so now I have a robust formula that allows me to enter any number, any one of my sample numbers here, and the vlookup function I've entered into those 3 cells is going to give me the date, the type of sample, and the concentration. So if I type in the sample ID number 450, I see the date, the type of sample, and the concentration. Or if I type in sample number 512, I see that information. Hope that helps you.